righty, good morning and happy Friday, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Josiah Gilliam, and I'm the My Brother's Keeper coordinator in the Mayor's Office of Equity. And we've been doing a series of broadcasts that explore the My Brother's Keeper initiative and different initiatives within the Office of Equity and within the city. And recently, we've been doing a deep dive around the concept of trauma, healing, and resilience. We feel like this is a timely conversation for a number of reasons. But one of those reasons is that there's a lot of activity in this space at different levels through various community-based organizations and programs. And we really felt like it was time to just create space for the topic and to talk about it. Certainly with COVID, and then also the violence that we've seen in community are also good reasons to talk about it. But we've really enjoyed it because there are just some tremendous things that are happening and some organizations that have been active in this space for a long time. More coordination recently than ever, more resources and things like that. Today, we have a really special opportunity to talk with a team from Gwen's Girls, who has been on broadcast in the past. I mean, the organization has been, but to talk about a special bucket of activity that they focus on within this realm. What we're going to do is just a brief round of introductions and then jump right in to the conversation. Something I feel impressed upon in the moment to offer is that some of these topics are challenging to deal with and to think about. And so what I will be doing, my intention is to hold space for that, and we encourage you to do the same. And if you need to take breaks for whatever reason, please feel free to do that. But there's a lot of interesting and important work here to learn about. So we're gonna try to lean in and have that conversation. As you may have noticed right before we get going, this is a little bit of a different format. I am at the City County building. It's great to be back here in person. I want to thank the City Channel team and IMP for making this possible. They make it possible every time we've done it, even completely remotely. And so I just wanted to acknowledge them and thank them for allowing me to come to the studio. So, all right, my friends, quick round of introductions, and then we'll jump right in, and we'll start with Ms. Twanda.
Good morning, Josiah. Thank you for inviting us here. My name is Twanda Clark-Edgal. I'm the Chief Program Officer at Gwen's Girls, and I provide oversight to all of the programs that are there.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Brittany.
Thank you, Josiah. My name is Brittany Brown, and I am the Young Adult Program Supervisor at Gwen's Girls, and I provide oversight for the See the Best in Me program, as well as the BAGALA, the Black Girls Advocacy, Leadership, and Alliance.
Thank you so much, Brittany. Korie.
Hi, Josiah. My name is Korie Moreland, and I am a mentor for the See the Best in Me program.
Thank you, Korie. Tytionna.
Good morning, Josiah. My name is Tytionna Williams, and I am a youth advocate for the See the Best in Me team.
Terrific. And last but not least, Karleigh.
Good morning, Josiah. My name is Karleigh Maide, and I am a youth advocate for the See the Best in Me program as well.
Thank you so much for being here, all of you. Okay, so Ms. Twanda, I'll start with you. We've had folks from Gwen's Girls, including Dr. Kathy, on previous broadcasts, but for those that aren't familiar, could you just give us an overview of Gwen's Girls and what we're here to talk about today?
Absolutely. Gwen's Girls was started in to the 2000s by Commander Gwen Elliott. She was the first African-American woman to work on the police force and then to raise her way to the ranks as the first commander on the police force. And then upon her retirement, after many years of working on the police force and looking at the disparity with Black girls, that they would go missing and it was almost as though no one would look for them, she decided that she really wanted to take a more holistic approach to serving the needs of Black girls and their families. And so upon her retirement, she started Gwen's Girls. And we've been in existence since 2000. As a result of that, Commander Gwen Elliott passed away, and her daughter, Kathy Elliott, Dr. Kathy Elliott, became the CEO about 5 years ago. Now, people may just be starting to hear about commercial sexual exploitation and trafficking of girls, but actually one of the things that she noticed in her work is that this was a prevalent issue. And although we may not have been calling it that at that particular time, she really wanted to provide programming that would support girls in their needs. And so we have a number of different programs for girls to really support where they're at Gwen's Girls and to serve their diverse needs. One of the programs that we do work through does look at girls who may have been exposed to commercial sexual exploitation. And so our programming is centered around prevention and intervention. And what we know is that any girl is at risk for exposure to sexual exploitation. And so I really want to shed some light on the fact that this is not something that goes on in foreign countries, that it is happening in our own backyards, and it extends across many demographics. We sit on coalition boards across the state of Pennsylvania, and what we know is that although all girls and even boys are at risk for sexual exploitation, that Black girls and our LGBTQ population is most at risk because they're most vulnerable. And it's through no fault of their own. There are a lot of different reasons that play a part in that, but Gwen's Girls has always been in the game of doing this work. Now it's become more trendy, and so a lot of people are doing it, but we've always been focused on how we can support the needs of Black girls and how we can do it holistically and providing the appropriate supports.
Thank you so much. So this is an outgrowth of history of meeting people where they're at, understanding their needs and what's affecting their life. When you say commercial sexual exploitation, how do you define that, and what is the commercial part of that term?
Right. Thank you for asking me that. So the best way for me to simplify it so that everybody understands what's happening, and I'm glad that you said that, because sometimes when we use this type of language and terminology, children who may be exposed to this say, well, that's not me, simply because they don't understand the language and the terminology. But the best way for me to simplify this so that our listening audience, our viewing audience understands it, is when I take an 11 or 12-year-old girl, because that's the average age of a girl who is sold for sex. Through no fault of her own, she's manipulated, she's coerced, and she ends up being into a life that is very traumatic for a number of different reasons. But that is the best way that I can say it, that they use her to get some type of a monetary gain as a result of it.
Okay, and so you mentioned that you sit on some statewide commissions and things like this. Could you just give us a sense of the lay of the land within the state of, in the Commonwealth of
Right.
who and how folks are thinking about this?
We are definitely looking at this in a different way. The narrative has changed. We know that this is not the girl's fault. She is the victim in all of this. And that she doesn't come to this life, into she doesn't come into this through any fault of her own, through manipulation and coercion. So I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the U.S. Attorney's Office and the work that they're doing to really focus on this, and Operation 10, which means that, trafficking ends now is basically what that stands for. And so what we have is a lot of communities, jurisdictions, areas that are really looking at what they can do to really stop and mitigate commercial sexual exploitation. So what we know is that through education, we know that through awareness, that when people have the tools and they understand, we are able to do better once we know better.
Gotcha. So one last context question. These are challenging topics and deep, painful topics. How do you broach this subject in community? How do you kind of engage with organizations around this topic, and how are you raising awareness around the work that you do in this respect?
So thank you for asking that. I think what you're doing today by allowing us to be a part of this podcast is definitely a step in the right direction, giving opportunities to really talk to the community, to educate the community, to build awareness in the community. And I think the biggest thing is to mitigate the myth around two things. One, that the victim chose this and that it's her fault. And, the other thing being that people really don't understand the nature of this, because it doesn't just occur in foreign countries, that it is very prevalent here, because we're talking about $1 billion business. And so getting the community to understand that it's very different than drug trafficking, because with a drug, you sell it one time and that's it. But when we're talking about commercial sexual exploitation, we're talking about trafficking of girls and even of boys, we're talking about, we take an individual and we sell them repeatedly. And so really getting people to understand that that's not a life that children choose helps to mitigate I think, the myths and the stigma that surrounds it.
I'd like to open it up. Thank you so much to the rest of the group. Before we jump into more questions, just any reactions or anything else you would add and how this work shows up for you all and how you explain this work?
So I'm going to actually just let the rest of the team start to, sort of respond.
Yeah, please.
Sure. I think the best way that Gwen's Girls is coming into this line of work is educating the public, like Ms. Twanda said, demystifying that fact that young people are choosing this life, taking away that stereotype, particularly when we're working with girls of color, that they're being fast or that they're choosing this life. This is something that they asked for as opposed to something that that's happening to them and that they're a victim.
Understood. Korie, something you wanted to add there? I see you unmuted.
No, I was just going to say, just the awareness, just like Ms. Twanda and Brittany said, just, making the community aware and just, for Black girls, a lot of times, they're quoted as fast and, there's all these different things put on them when they didn't choose this life. This is something that, they're put into. Yeah.
So I hear this point of raising awareness and dispelling myths. Let's get specific about what Gwen's Girls does in this space. What are the programs and kind of resources that you offer specifically, and we can talk more about them. And what else is kind of generally available right now in this space from your perspectives? And anyone can jump in.
Sure, I'll take a stab at that, Josiah. So Gwen's Girls, we offer the See the Best in Me program, and that is in response to the commercial sexual exploitation of children that is happening here right in Pittsburgh, particularly against girls of color. So what this program does is we hold weekly sessions with the girls, and when we talk about exploitation, we get specific. What is a John? What does it mean to be exploited? Because sometimes when we use those words exploited, like Ms. Twanda said earlier in the podcast, that sometimes the girls don't understand that and doesn't feel like it relates to them because that's not the language that they would use. What does a pimp look like? It's not what we see in the movies all the time. It's not someone walking around with a cane and or what's glorified in music today. It can look like the average person, and that the girls who are brought into the life, again, doesn't look like what you see on TV. They're, sometimes they're not standing on a corner. These girls are being delivered door to door to people, that this is happening every day to the average girl, to the girl to the girl that's getting, or young man that's getting straight A's in school, the girls who are failing behind in school, that there is no one look to a girl who is involved in a life or to a person that is exploiting them into the life. We also offer mentoring, and you see some of our mentors here, Korie and Karleigh and Tytionna, where they are working with the girls one-on-one, that they're helping them create goals and reach their goals, that they're helping them. We have girls who have gotten into really great schools with the help of their mentors here that's on the call. They were helping helping them identify their need and their resources to meet those needs, because we know that when there is a need, that's where the exploiters exploit the most. So if they see that a girl is in need of clothing, or they're in need of, maybe a loving, quote unquote, family, that they'll try to exploit that need. So here at Gwen's Girls, we try to identify those needs, and then we give them resources and we help them meet their needs, so that way they don't have to be exploited.
Thank you so much. Tytionna, something you wanted to add?
So I just was going to add, most importantly, at Gwen's Girls, we talk about the terminology. We talk about what exploitation is, how, you may be susceptible to it. And I think that we do a really, really good job at letting them know this is what you might hear. You might hear on the street, oh, my old head, oh, my this, but this is what this actually means. So definitely that, and definitely just being strength-based. That's a very, very big thing when you do this work, is being very, very strength-based. Yeah,
it's a perfect segue. So when we were talking about this conversation, a couple terms came to mind, and some of the prep that you all had done. And so let's talk about what some of them mean in this context. So there's this question around what does it mean to be a victim? What does it mean to be a survivor? And then a term that I believe you all coined, I'm not sure, maybe we can learn about the history here, surthriver.
Yes.
Let's just walk through these terms, because you mentioned this idea of being strength-based. So how do we think about victimhood? How do we think about survivorship? And then how do we think about being a surthriver?
So what it means to be a victim is when someone takes advantage of you. And oftentimes our girls don't realize that they are victims. They feel like it's their fault. They feel like they put themselves in this situation and now they have to do what they're doing. So we really just talk to them about what it means to be a victim, what it means to be, manipulated and groomed, and to go into these things because these, pimps or Johns see a need, like, Brittany was saying. Anybody else want to take a stab at the victim piece?
Karleigh, you want to go ahead on and elaborate a little bit?
So I think it was pretty much covered. What a victim is: somebody who is being exploited, taken advantage of. Moving into the survivor piece, we consider a survivor as somebody who has made it out of the life and not currently being exploited. And then moving into surthriver is someone who's really pushing forward in life, really, thriving, finding ways to stay out of the life, locating the resources, maybe even helping people that are currently in the life trying to get out. So just really moving on from that experience that they had went through and moving forward in life and thriving. So that's what we mean by surthriver.
And I do like to highlight that, if I can, Josiah, that we didn't coin the term. We use it a lot, but it actually, the first time I heard it was by Dr. Maureen Carson. So I want to give credit where credit is due.
Yes, we appreciate that. I love it because there is an additional idea past just surviving, past just being a victim and making it through that and escaping that and coming to the other side of that. But that there is more available, a sense of thriving and a sense of healing. So I'd like to talk, especially with the mentors that we have, with us. What supports does an individual need in your experience to heal from this trauma? And maybe, to be honest, before we get to that, what supports do they need when you're just starting to engage, with them as you're building the relationship from scratch? Karleigh.
I would say the best support that you can give somebody trying to come out of their life is consistency. A lot of times they don't have consistency in their life and they need that one person that they know is going to be there for them, that's going to help them in the most positive way that they can and not exploit them. So I would say that's the main important part of starting to work with a young lady or male that might be being exploited. It's just being that person. I also feel that the next thing that you would do is, as we had said, understand what their needs are, what they were being exploited by, and filling those needs. So really identifying how we can help them best to keep them from being re-exploited or being exploited to begin with.
Korie, I see your head nodding. What is that process like of figuring out what those needs may be, like what the realities are?
I was just going to say, a majority of our girls, it's basic needs. It might be shelter, it might be clothing, it might be food. So like Karleigh said, just figuring out what their needs are. A lot of our girls struggle with basic needs. So once you're figuring out what their basic needs are, helping them get those basic needs and helping them sustain those needs. Because a lot of our girls, once they get those needs, it's okay, now how am I going to continue this need? So it might be, covering my rent, or, having a permanent place to live, or whatever the situation is for that individual.
I'd like to add to a lot of things that we do is we work with each and every individual young lady on establishing what they're good at, what they like to do. If they love to do hair, okay, let's, critique those skills so that you can use that in a way of taking care of yourself. as well. So they always have something to fall back on. So really taking their strengths and interest and molding them that way they can help themselves as well.
If someone needs, more consistent and stable housing, how do you help satisfy that need?
I think there's a lot of way, and we're very fortunate that we live in Allegheny County that is very rich in resources here. So we're always looking to partner with other organizations. Networking is always key. Using the 211 link, and letting the girls know, like there's apps called like Big Bird. Are you using Big Bird? Or are you going to Action House and different things like that? But always networking, diving back in there. I know most people who watch this may not even know what a Rolodex is, but going back into your Rolodex and really pulling out those resources for housing. And then identifying that there's so many resources that are specific to different things. Are you a part of the LGBTQI community? Because there's resources that are for that. Are you Black? Are you Latina? All these different resources. Maybe if a young lady had, dealt with, DNA, drug and alcohol, there's resources for that, so finding resources that meet that need.
Gotcha.
And I just wanted to add to also finding community resources, through activities such as we may have a youth who want to participate in basketball, finding, outside resources as far as a basketball training or boxing or gymnastics. So really, like Brittany said, definitely resources, definitely community resources, because there's a lot of different things out here.
Yes. So what I'm hearing you guys, you say is this idea of you're meeting them where they're at, you're figuring out what the realities are in this person's life. And then you're trying to connect them with resources to meet needs, to reduce the risk factors associated with commercial sexual exploitation, but just in general, try to stabilize the scenario. But then it sounds too that there's this pivot at a certain point of starting to build out, holistically parts of their life. So it's not just needs are getting met, their passions are being cultivated and invested in. There are learning and career pathways that can evolve based on what those interests are. And along that line, or along that process, it sounds like you're really setting the ground for these folks to heal. And so I'm wondering what you would say to our audience and how you express to folks in community what healing can really look like, maybe some examples that you've seen, or just ways you think about it, because obviously each person's there may be patterns in a general sense, but each person's setup is so unique, and each person's disposition and what they might be into completely unique. So how do you think about healing, and how do you communicate the realities of healing to others?
So I think first and foremost, for a lot of young people who are involved in a life, it's coming to them to realizing that they were actually a victim is number one. I feel like a lot of times why young people re-enter into being exploited is because they can't forgive themselves for getting involved in their life, even though it wasn't their fault. So like a young lady, I worked with a young lady in the past who was exploited at the age of 14. And then when she turned 19, then she began to exploit herself, because that's the only way she felt that she can meet her need. And that's the only place that she placed value on herself was through her body and what her body can offer other people, and getting paid for the use of her body. And then once she really realized that she was groomed from a very long time, I think we live in society too, where we teach young girls particularly that a man is supposed to meet and be your provider and meet your need. So now that they're growing up and they're 14, 15, especially in the Black community, unfortunately, it is very normalized for a teenage girl to have interactions with an adult man. So at that tender age of 14, she's thinking, well, I sought this out. I was walking down the street in these clothes that were provocative and things like that, not realizing that a Black girl was sexualized by the age of 5, and that we're taught that, that we are just our bodies and that we're supposed to use our bodies to meet our needs, or, to get paid for, because that's what we see in TV all day. So once they really start realizing that they were a victim and that they can forgive themselves, because that's a part of the healing journey too. And then to really realize that you are worth more than your body and that you can rewrite your chapter. I like to say that, all my trauma that I may have experienced as a young person was the door to my future, as opposed to the barrier that held me back from my future. So once a young person really gets to understand that, they can say that, that I can be a conqueror and that I can be more than what a label that the world is putting on me, that I can be successful. I can be a businesswoman. I can be a college graduate. I can be a homeowner. I can be a mother. I can be a wife. I can be anything that I call myself forth, and I can manifest this in my life. So that healing journey looks different for everyone. We can't really put a title on it for each and every person because it's so individualized for each person. But that loving yourself piece, and that forgiving yourself and knowing that you don't have to live to the label that anybody places on you, I think is the most important key in that first part of your journey.
That's well said. Tytionna, something you wanted to add?
Yes, I was also going to say to finding survivors, to show the girls like, this has happened to me and now I'm an entrepreneur. Now I'm doing this, I'm doing nails, I have a business, like, just showing them that, yes, this can happen to you, but how do you turn your pain into passion? Similar to what Brittany said.
Let's sit with that for a quick second. I'm fascinated by this identity and forgiveness piece. So let me just kind of speak back what I'm hearing and then love for you all to react and deepen my understanding and hopefully folks that are watching as well. So this idea of understanding that someone has been a victim of exploitation speaks to me of them coming to a place where they understand the forces that were at play that led to the experience, the decisions that were made by other people and by themselves, to say that it wasn't just, to your point, as simple as seeking it out by walking down the street, that there are societal factors and that there are community factors and other folks with trauma and these other things that kind of led, to this. But then you've mentioned a couple of times this idea of forgiving themselves. And I'm curious, like how you've seen that point get reached, and then what that looks like in real time. What is the forgiveness that's extended to oneself? Because it seems to me to be kind of a point of the person from a posture of like a compassionate awareness, extending that to themselves, to say there were all these other things at play. It's the burden isn't all on the individual, and as such, here's forgiveness. Can you just speak more about that shift?
Sure. I think that really comes with the part of making sure our girls are educated, because people like to say, when you're ignorant, it's bliss. So when you don't know, you just don't know. So if this is what your normalcy is, that, girls are, interacting with older men, then that's so you're normal. And then when there's trauma really starts to build and come out of that, it's kind of like, well, I knew what I was getting into. I knew that he was older. I knew he was involved in different types of lifestyles, and I chose that for myself. And that's absolutely not the case. So once you start to educate them and let them know that, a 14-year-old, 15-year-old, even 16-year-old dating a 22-year-old, 24-year-old man is not normal. It's not okay. That this is what actually exploiting looks like. This is what trafficking looks like. Then they really start to understand that, no matter what decisions I made, no matter what I wear, that I can choose to wear whatever I want to wear, and that I and only myself can give consent for my body. So once they really start to understand those, and get educated in that, then that's when they can really understand that, I was a victim in this. I was a victim of just my community. I was a victim of not knowing, I was a victim of him taking advantage because he knew I didn't know, and that he normalized it for me, or people around me normalized it for me. So once they really start getting that education, then they can really understand that they were a victim, and that they can start to say, I can forgive myself for the past, and really move on, and that I can reclaim who I am today, and that I and only I can speak for who I am and what I'm going to do in the future.
Tytionna, something you wanted to add?
Yeah, so I wanted to elaborate on the join piece, because it's not always a male. Oftentimes it can be a female. Oftentimes it can be a friend. Me and my friends, we're going to this boy's house and, you know, there happens to be other boys there. So sometimes it could look like that. There's just a lot of different ways that exploitation and trafficking can look. You have a boyfriend who's the same age as you. And it's, if you love me, you'll sleep with my friend, and you'll sleep with this friend, and you'll sleep with that friend. So exploitation can come in different forms.
So I appreciate that, that nuance and that depth there. So we have this moment of understanding the factors that are at play. And that's why it's so important to raise awareness and to give a language to help describe more accurately and more holistically the experience and what's taken place. But then the idea here, as you guys mentioned before, isn't to stay in that, well, I'm a victim mentality or acknowledgement. It's to transition. I hear this idea of transformation of identity, this reclaiming of identity, which is to me is like a reclaiming of personal agency, to say, yes, I understand what all has gone in, but in this present moment, I'm extending myself that forgiveness. There's a moment where I'm on the other side of it, in that survivor kind of mentality of I am now on the other side. But then the surf thriver, am I saying that right? Surf thriver. That's an additional transformation. Now they're actively not only claiming their own agency, they're actively in pursuit of their new life, so to speak, their own path, with an open-eyed acknowledgement of the past, but with a focus on the future. How do you all walk with people through that? What does that transformation kind of look like in real time?
So you're talking about how does the transformation, what does it look like in real time? And I think it looks different for a lot of different people. So I'm going to ask Karleigh, what would you say in reference to that transformation? And then I'll ask Korie to kind of add some light to, what you've seen, because we've had a lot of really great success stories. And one of the things that we know from this work is, I think Brittany said it, that, our past doesn't define us. And so transformation is different for each young person, but I'll ask each person to maybe share a story or something that they know of in terms of what it's been to see, young people transform. But I'll say, if I could, that for me, the awareness piece, when young people find out initially what is going on and they get that piece of education, it's almost empowering. Once they get through the guilt and the blaming, then it becomes empowering when they know.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the time really getting from victim to survivor to survivor, as Twanda said, is really different from for everybody. I saw a young lady at one point, being exploited at a very young age. It took a while for her to identify the fact that she was actually a victim. And it took even longer to forgive herself for being in that predicament in the first place, and really understanding what had happened to her. And then I saw her go on, building her self-esteem, really working with people around her that encouraged her and loved her and supported her, and taking the first dive into being a survivor by helping educate the community, by using their voice on their experience, on really helping people understand that it is actually going on in Pittsburgh, and that it's not fake news. And then moving from that into helping other young ladies that might be in the same situation or could potentially be in the same situation. I've also watched that young lady, go into college, become an amazing mother, and doing just many things for their community that they can to really build that good life around them so that they can fully move on from what had happened and try to help other young ladies from being in the same predicament. I've also saw other young ladies become entrepreneurs, amazing mothers as well, really being that person for the community, that mother goose looking over all the young girls, really helping To me, that's a survivor to me.
Beautiful, thank you. Korie?
Yeah, I would just piggyback off of what Karleigh said. Just basically, I think once they get through the forgiving themselves piece and embracing their new journey, and building off of their team and just knowing who they have in place to support them and getting that stability and knowing what they want, I feel like, it's go from there. Like I've seen plenty of girls. I had a youth that I worked with who, was caught up in this situation, who now is a great mother, who is in college now, who's doing all these amazing things, who is an advocate. So it's definitely, there's definitely hope, you know what I mean?
Mm.
Josiah, if I can quickly add, I just really want to say this. So I think for any young lady or any person who's involved in a life or may know someone, a lot of times guilt and shame keeps them bound to their past. It keeps them bound to furtherly being exploited. So once we remove that guilt and shame, the best thing you can do to move into that being a survivor and a survivor is having people around you that are non-judgmental, that can just listen. Even not listen, but this can offer you a way out. That can offer you just that talking piece can be that's a way for a young person to really achieve being a survivor, is having someone that's non-judgmental.
Yes, yeah, a safe space and a trusted, person who's equipped to hold that space can be so meaningful. And you mentioned this idea of hope, Korie. Absolutely. It shines through the words that you all are saying, for sure. Even with the tough subject matter, you clearly there's a testimony. There's several testimonies here of that this transformation is possible and has happened. So we mentioned this idea of some of the realities, here in Pittsburgh. We like to talk about as practical as possible for folks that are watching, ways that they can support and get involved. What are some of the ways that your average, neighbor, so to speak, can learn more about this space and the realities that are at play, but also support Gwen's Girls and the work that you do?
So I think one of the things that happens, and we want to be really careful, because when people hear, about CSEC, commercial sexual exploitation, I think immediately they want to get involved and they want to do something. But it does take a skill, it takes an expertise, and we have to understand that there is a trauma that's related to this, and we don't want to re-victimize people. So I think the best thing that people can do is to, contact the local police force if they see something, they want to say something, but to really make sure that a professional is doing this, and that they're not jumping in. For a lot of our young people, and when we say in the life, what we're talking about is in the life of being exploited or being trafficked. For a lot of our young people, they don't realize that they are in this life. And so people have to be very careful with the way that they handle this situation. So the best thing I'm going to say, that the best thing that the public can do is just to report it to the local police department. And if there are young people that are actually struggling, I do want to give the number to the National Human Trafficking Hotline, which is 1-888-373-7888. Also, you can contact us at gwensgirls.org. We'll be more than happy to support individuals, young girls that are going through this process, families that are going through this. But I think it's really important that people don't try to say, well, I just heard a 30-minute, Facebook Live on CSEC, so now I can, rescue people. That's not what it's about. It's a lot more than that. So we really want to, broach this subject with sensitivity and broach the individuals that, may be in this situation with a level of sensitivity as well.
Absolutely. And a point well taken. Folks that have tuned into this series recently will hear a lot of similar themes on prevention and intervention. We see that in street outreach for, say, gun violence, things like that. but also this same sentiment, Ms. Twanda, this idea of, folks will get passionate, enthusiastic, and we want to honor that. But there's a reality of the need for trained and equipped expertise to truly do this work, effectively. And what we try to do in the space in general terms is highlight, opportunities for trainings or programs where folks can learn more, so that if they truly feel led and called, they can become equipped, or they can come alongside folks that are equipped and help as they will. But I really appreciate you mentioning that in this space, as well. There's such a possibility of re-traumatization, even with the best of intentions, and these are very, very sensitive and traumatic experiences, and that can't be emphasized, enough. I'd like to talk about this idea very quickly of the focus on strengths that you all do in the mentorship that you do. When you're talking with folks, how do you go about identifying those? And then what does the process look like for kind of encouraging that and connecting them with, where they are passionate, where they do have strengths, where they have interests in this field or in this type, of work?
So I think for us, how we based off of, what their needs are, just basic engagement. Like we, said throughout the podcast, meeting our youth where they're at. So just having a basic conversation, whether that be connecting them through games like Connect Four or Uno. Sometimes we can have basic conversations through that. Sometimes taking a walk to actually figuring out what the youth, likes and enjoys, and it'll come out. Once you're able to build that engagement, they, will talk to you. And it kind of like, once you get to that point of building that engagement and now they're finally talking, you're like, okay, cool. Now we can figure out this, we can figure out this, we can figure out, different things that you may enjoy, that you may like, and go from there.
Do you?
I also want to say
games and stuff.
Okay.
What was that? I'm sorry.
Do the rest of you play games like activity-based, kind of relationship building?
I think the most important part about the games, or first of all, they're fun. And I like to win, so I'm always competitive. However, it's reminding a girl that she's a child and it's okay to be involved in kid-friendly activities. Taking a girl to a jump park, like a trampoline park, just remind them that you're a girl, because a lot of times these girls don't have opportunity to have a childhood because it was stolen at a very young age. And I think what Tytionna was really hinting at is why we can pull these strengths out of the girls, because we're constantly consistent, even if the girl herself isn't consistent. So if I or one of the mentors set a meeting with a young lady and she doesn't respond to her text or a call to confirm the visit, we'll still go. We'll still go to her house, knock on the door and text her, say, hey, I came to your house, you weren't here today, but I'm thinking about you. How are you today? Being that consistent. Young girls who maybe I've worked with in the past who, kind of didn't meet with me for a whole month, I will still once a week or even bi-weekly or even more than that, text them in the morning and say, I hope you have a really good day today. Hey, I heard this song that made me think about you. And it's not that we're doing it because this is their job. We're doing it because we're truly passionate about it. And we really want these girls to get into the place where they know that there's an adult who truly cares about them, that wants nothing from them other than them loving and being successful for themselves and whatever that success looks like for them. So for some girls, that success may be, I'm going to a 4-year university. Some success means I'm getting stable housing. Some success means I'm raising my children and they're not involved in the system. Some success may be, I got a job and I'm happy with that. Some success means that I haven't smoked or done drugs or alcohol, or I haven't sold myself in 3 days, and that's a success. Every milestone is, met with a cheer. Every milestone. If I had a young lady who didn't go to school for 6 months, and she went to school for two days out of 1 week, and we went out to a restaurant to celebrate because I was so happy that she finally went to school. And for some people, that may look minute because it was only 2 days, but for her, that was a major success. So building that relationship, being consistent. And that's how we really pull out those strengths. Some girls, they just dabble in doing nail art and they don't really see how that can be a career. So then we link them to other women who are doing now or who are successful in their own right. And now they can see this can actually be a business for me. This can be a job for me, and I can be successful in here. So linking them, because we know that Gwen's Girls can't be their end all be all. So making sure that we're working ourselves out of a job and making sure that we're connecting them with resources, with other thrivers, or other women who are entrepreneurs or business owners that are in the same field that these young ladies want to be in. I think that's most important.
I also want to add the importance of engagement first. You know, when you're first meeting somebody, you don't know them, you're not going to want to sit down and tell your life story to them. That's any of us. So it is so important to really let that youth get to know you first before expecting any information out of them. Let them build a trust with you, because you got to remember, they were just exploited. They're not going to trust anybody. So you really have to be there and allow them to trust you. And the best thing to do with engagement is doing activities like Brittany and Tytionna had touched on, because it's so awkward sitting down face to face, trying to talk to somebody about these very touchy, uncomfortable topics. You don't want to do that. So it's always good to try to get them occupied, whether it's drawing, whether it's playing the games, whether, like Tytionna said, taking a walk or going somewhere in the community, because it's occupying them, and you'll start seeing a lot more start coming out as they're not sitting down face to face, staring at a stranger and expected to give their life story and what they want.
Absolutely. Ms. Twanda, did you want to add anything?
I think they have done a really good job at, really summing it up. The one thing I do want to highlight is that we approach this work from a therapeutic lens. So we are a sanctuary certified model, and everybody in our organization is trained through that lens as well. And so we are always looking at, what has happened versus what is wrong with the young people that we interact with on a regular basis, and always looking for the why behind the behavior. I know sometimes adults are put off when they see young people that are acting out, or maybe they think their behaviors are, a little out of control, but we're always looking for what is the why behind the behavior, and trying to be really solution oriented and really working with that young person to get them to a place where they are, healing.
What has happened instead of what is wrong? I think that's powerful. Can you speak a little bit more about the training and that you all have, and what the certifications, look like, to give folks a sense?
Absolutely. So we are a sanctuary model. And I don't just do sanctuary at work. Sanctuary is a part of my life. And we were really fortunate to be able to take part in this training. But every meeting that we do at Gwen's Girls starts off with 3 questions. We start everything off with these 3 questions, and that is, how are you feeling? What are your goals for today? And who can you ask for help should you need it? We ask those 3 questions because we always want to gauge the mood of our girls. We don't use words like good. We always encourage them to use feeling words to really be in touch with how they're feeling. In addition to that, we always want them to be goal oriented. So we're asking them, what are their goals? What are they focused on? But we always want them to know that we got them. We're going to support them through whatever it is that they're going through. It gives us an opportunity before we start our time to transition them from where they were at to where they are now, and to really let them know that we are present and with them. And that model isn't just done for our girls. We do that amongst ourselves as well. Whenever we start a meeting, we are continually checking in with one another. One of the things that we know is that when we're in these helping fields doing this work, we have to make sure that we're taking care of the caregiver as well. So we have to make sure that, we're supporting one another as well as supporting the girls.
Yes, and I wonder about that. So especially for the mentors on the call, what does that support look like for each other? And how do you, approach your own mental and emotional health, dealing with, very heavy topics and tough situations?
We support each other by really educating each other about real self-care, taking care of ourselves, whether that is establishing just a time of the day to do something just for you, or establishing a therapist or somebody that you would feel comfortable in talking to. We also encourage each other a lot when we see if somebody is having a rough day, especially during our check-ins. One of the things is if somebody didn't pass, the check-in saying they're not feeling well, do you need a check-in? Somebody will call you later. We'll be there to help you. So we really try to gather around each other, support each other in the best way that we can. If someone's workload is a little too heavy that day, they're not feeling good, us as a team will step in and try to help that person with that workload as best as we can. So it's really just different on every person on figuring out what their need is and what we can do to help best as a team supporting each other.
It's great.
I
Tytionna?
think
Brittany?
really, sorry, I apologize. I think I'm just really grateful to be a supervisor of these three awesome, amazing mentors here. And the point I really try to make, like Karleigh said, is that self-care piece. And not just say, I think we all, self-care, we just throw that word out, those two words out there, and we don't actually mean it. So when my staff are taking a self-care day, I make sure they're taking self-care day. Don't call me if it's work related, because I'm not going to answer. And if I do, I will answer. But if you start talking about work, I'm going to ask you to excuse yourself from that phone conversation and truly enjoy your day. And a part of the sanctuary model is we all have safety plans. And then you'll see us when you see us out in the community or at work, we wear our name badges. And on the back of that name badge, you'll see a safety plan in which each person, including staff and the girls at Gwen's Girls, identifies 3 to 5 things that they can do for a safety plan if they do become overwhelmed. So that can look like taking a walk, listening to music, something like that. And you don't have to say, I'm using my safety plan. You don't have to say, Brittany, I'm using my safety plan. I need to go outside. You can simply just use your safety plan and bring, what I like to say, bring yourself back to center and whatever that looks like for you.
I love that. Something that we worth emulating just in general, especially, coming out of COVID, well, still in COVID, quite frankly. But this idea of what are the things that an individual can do, that you can do to return to center, to have that sense of peace and wholeness in your own lives. Okay, my friends, I think we should bring our conversation to a close here. Obviously, we could keep probably talking about this for for hours or so much here. I'd like to just open it up for a couple final questions. Is there anything that we didn't touch on, whether it's misconceptions or facts about the work, or just something you'd like to share about this work before we move on?
I would like to add that Black and brown girls can be victims too. That we have to really put aside our own personal stereotypes and biases that we may have, particularly against girls of color, when it comes to being exploited, and to know that no one just seeks out or is sought out to be exploited, that they are truly in need. And if you don't have that education or background, like Ms. Twanda said earlier in the podcast, truly reach out to that person. And be mindful and intentional in your interactions. So running up to someone, to their exploiter, trying to pull them out is not going to ever be the best way to get a young person out of their life. And then when you are meeting with someone, be truly intentional with your actions, making sure that you're actually giving your full attention to that person, putting your cell phone down and letting them know that this is a safe space for them and that you're here to support them and whatever that support may look like for that young person.
I just want to reiterate the National Human Trafficking Hotline, and also you can text 233-733-HELP if you need information or if you need help. And then the number is 1-888-373-7888. And again, you can also reach out to us at Gwen's Girls at contactus@gwensgirls.org.
Ms. Wanda, that hotline is for folks if they're concerned about others and people that are in the life themselves.
Absolutely. And if they need support, they want to get out, if they just want information, that hotline is available. And what we know too is that it may not be the first time that someone hears that they actually get out of the life. It may be hearing it several times. And as the team mentioned earlier, it's important to know that there are people who are consistently around. And we are at Gwen's Girls consistently here to support and to help.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Karleigh, I saw you had unmuted. Something you'd like to add?
Yeah, just some tips for adults and parents. That way they can spot a potential exploitation. Things like emotional withdrawal from the youth, as well as new shoes, name brand purses, their hair done, things that they can't financially provide for themselves and you're not financially providing. Those could be red flags, as well as sometimes promiscuity could be red flags. So things like that, a few tips just to look out for that could be potential exploitation or trafficking.
And if they see these potential red flags, what should they do?
Report it to the national hotline, to law enforcement, and don't be judgmental. Really, like we continue to say, meet them where they're at, be that support for them, let them know that you love them, you're there for them to support them, you want to help them. Don't force it down their throats that they're a victim. I think those are the beginning steps of what to do. Okay. If anyone wants to add.
Okay. You all shared just so many wonderful ideas. Today, I love this idea that was mentioned earlier. Post the transformation, this idea of building a whole life around yourself and honoring what you're into and pursuing it with passion and with support and with community in all of this. And it reminds me of a line that I saw online recently from a poet. I think his name is, or their name is Louise Gluck. And it said, I was just struck by it. At the end of my suffering, there was a door. I was reminded of that when you're talking about this identity transformation piece of understanding what led to decisions and to realities in the past, understanding what it means to be on the other side of that, and then understanding what it means from a place of agency and community to blaze your path forward, however you choose this whole life around yourself. So I'm wondering if we could just, kind of close here by going around, and if you could just share what gives you hope in this work, because obviously what you deal with a lot of really traumatic incidences and stuff like that. But when you think of the concept of hope, the idea of being on the other side of that door of suffering, for folks, whether it's people that might be in the life or just folks that might be listening to this conversation or curious about learning more, what comes to your mind and to your heart that brings you hope? And I'll just go around and make it easy. Start with Korie.
I would say seeing the success, basically seeing the outcome, basically seeing the future, seeing the hope, seeing the light.
Beautiful, thank you. Tytionna?
For me, what gives me hope, I would definitely have to say having that lived experience, knowing that I was the hope and knowing that I can give the hope to someone else is really, really important to me.
Beautiful, thank you. Karleigh?
I'd have to piggyback off Tytionna, knowing the life as it is, coming out of the life, seeing where I'm at, I know that it's possible. I'm also very happy of the awareness that is now being brought about in the programs and resources that are being openly available to these young ladies and males that are being exploited, and people wanting to know and wanting to help. And these young ladies really, understanding what's going on and starting to come out of this life and wanting better. That gives me my hope and makes me really want to push forward and continue with the work.
Thank you so much. Brittany?
Thank you, Josiah. Being a survivor myself, I stand on this scripture, for life intended to harm me, but God intended it for my good, for this very moment to place me in a position to save the lives of many. So that always gives me hope when I see young ladies, and even if they come to one meeting or two, or they're inconsistent, knowing that they want to do different, they want to be better, that they want to be successful, really gives me hope to see that they can smile even through the trauma that they're currently facing, to know that they are reaching out, seeking out, that I know that from working with the young ladies in the past, that they can be tremendous, and that gives me hope.
Wonderful, thank you. Ms. Twanda.
I think I've been doing this for a long time, Josiah. So I'm a little bit older. I know you can't tell than most of the women that are sitting here. But one of the things that definitely gives me hope is the consistency of our actions as people who do this work. Being able to approach it in a way that is strength-based, non-judgmental, and really believing that our girls, our young people, when they are ready, they will save themselves. And we are the support there to help guide them to that path.
Wonderful. Well, Korie, Tytionna, Karleigh, Brittany, and Twanda, thank you each so very much for the work that you do and for who you are in the world and in this work. Thank you for sharing about this work and this journey with me and sharing space, this morning. I very much appreciate that. This afternoon now, I should say. And I'd like to also thank those that have tuned in, whether in person or after the fact, for being interested in this topic and this conversation. It's very meaningful to us, and we appreciate it. I just want to echo what was shared, the resources, the hotline to reach out to Gwen's Girls if you are concerned, if you'd like to learn more, if you'd like to deepen your understanding or find ways to be supportive, please do that. And we hope that you're also encouraged, wherever you might be on your journey, that there are resources and trained experts and new future possibilities available in the present moment and in the future. Be on the lookout for more broadcasts and conversations as we sit with this topic and explore through the various realms that it shows up in our community and in our state and in our nation. And in the meantime, please stay very safe and very well. Take care.